It's a good bounce back win for us today. I thought we started the game with the right tone on the defensive end. And so that was that was by design for us to get back to our normal way.
They told us it was about experience, about defense, about how the Olympic stage supposedly wasn't built for a rookie, no matter how big her name had become. But as the 2025 roster conversation heats up, that confident narrative is collapsing fast. What once sounded like firm conviction from the coaching staff is now bending under undeniable pressure. And we're watching one of the most dramatic reversals in recent sports history unfold in real time. In the summer of 2024, head coach Cheryl Reeve and the USA Selection Committee made a calculated gamble, betting that Team USA's legacy could overpower the absence of Caitlin Clark, that a gold medal alone would quiet every critic. They won the medal, but they lost the momentum, and the public conversation, and that loss has proven far more costly. Now, subtle shifts in language and reported changes behind the scenes suggest what fans around the world already knew. Leaving Caitlin Clark off the roster was a monumental misjudgment. This has moved beyond one player or one decision. It's about the future relevance of the sport itself. The rigid confidence of the old guard has collided with the undeniable cultural and commercial impact Clark brings, and the fallout is impossible to ignore. Today, we're breaking down the admission, the consequences, and the urgent scramble to repair the damage before the 2025 cycle accelerates. The coach may be rethinking her stance, but the question remains, did reality arrive too late? To grasp how massive this reversal truly is, you have to rewind to the moment everything changed. When the Paris roster dropped and Caitlin Clark's absence didn't just spark debate, it shook the entire sports world. It became a cultural fault line the moment the decision dropped, with the committee, guided by Coach Reeve's philosophy, shielding itself behind the hazy idea of experience. The justification was familiar. The international game is tougher, more complex, and a 22-year-old, no matter how decorated her college resume, supposedly couldn't replace a decade-long veteran. But let's be clear, this was never only about basketball. History tells a different story, even with Team USA's men, where young phenoms have routinely been brought in to learn on the biggest stage, from Christian Laettner to Anthony Davis long before superstardom fully arrived. The experience argument collapses when you remember that the Olympics are also a showcase for the sport's future. By excluding Clark, they didn't just favor veterans. They deliberately muted the spotlight. Around the league, insiders whispered that this was really about chemistry, and in elite sports, chemistry often means managing status. Team USA's locker room is stacked with icons like Diana Taurasi and Breanna Stewart, and there was clear concern that Clark's gravitational pull of media attention would shift the balance. The fear wasn't performance, it was perception, veterans fading into the background of a Caitlin Clark moment. To preserve the comfort of the establishment, fan energy was traded away. It was a backward-looking decision that ignored present reality, reducing Clark to just another rookie, instead of recognizing her as an unprecedented economic and cultural force. They believed the noise would fade once competition began, that fans would simply move on. But that assumption became the first major error in a chain that now explains this uneasy 2025 reversal. Leading into the Olympics and the WNBA season, the message from the establishment was blunt. Clark would struggle, punctuated by Diana Taurasi's now famous "reality is coming" remark. A clear signal from the old guard to the next generation that dominance at one level wouldn't automatically be welcomed at the top. That mindset clearly shaped Team USA's decision-making, because if the coaches truly believed Clark would be overwhelmed by professionals, leaving her home felt justified. You don't take a weakness to Paris. But then the season unfolded, and that logic collapsed in real time. Clark didn't just hold her ground, she elevated. Yes, the opening stretch was uneven, turnovers piled up, defenses tested her physically, and opponents seemed eager to challenge her. But she adjusted at a pace that sent shockwaves through the league. By the Olympic break, she already looked like one of the premier point guards in the world, and by season's end, she was rewriting assist records, stacking triple-doubles, and launching shots from distances that redefined spacing. The reality that was promised did arrive, but it wasn't a lesson for Clark. It was a wake-up call for the veterans. Her on-court production shattered every basketball-based excuse for the omission. As film after film showed, she was outperforming a significant portion of the roster sent overseas. Each dominant night became a direct challenge to Coach Reeves' evaluation. And while fans noticed first, the media and sponsors weren't far behind. Once performance erased the readiness argument, only an uncomfortable truth remained. She simply wasn't wanted. And that brings us to Cheryl Reeve, an accomplished champion, a sharp strategist, and a towering figure in the sport, but also a coach known for guarding tradition fiercely. All season long, the tension between Reeve and the Clark phenomenon was impossible to miss, especially in press conferences where questions about record crowds were redirected toward generic league growth, carefully avoiding acknowledgement of the Indiana rookie's specific pull. It felt less like coincidence and more like resistance, a quiet frustration that a player she didn't anoint as the greatest was receiving all-time level attention. That bias appeared to spill into the USA selection process, where Reeves' preference for defense-first structure clashed with Clark's high-risk, high-reward offensive brilliance. On paper, it was a stylistic conflict, but elite coaches adapt systems to generational talent, not the other way around. Reeve chose rigidity over flexibility, effectively declaring that her system mattered more than Clark's undeniable impact. But now the tone is shifting, and the resistance is finally melting, because denying undeniable greatness eventually turns stubbornness into embarrassment. As early conversations around the 2025 roster begin, Reeve is being forced to confront reality. Yes, the team won gold, but the Olympic viewership numbers were nowhere near their ceiling, while WNBA games featuring Clark were pulling audiences that rivaled, and in some cases surpassed, NBA playoff matchups. By leaving Clark home, the staff didn't diminish the rookie, they disconnected from the audience, and in modern sports, that mistake is unforgivable. The strategy has to change because basketball isn't just competition, it's business, and business always follows the money. Team USA runs on sponsorships, led by Nike, and Nike has tied a massive investment to Caitlin Clark's brand through a signature shoe deal. No executive wants their biggest asset sidelined during the world's largest sporting event, and behind the scenes, that frustration reportedly spoke loudly. Nike wants merchandise moving, moments going viral, and global buzz. And while a Clark-less Team USA carries prestige, it doesn't generate cultural ignition. Add Clark, and it becomes a worldwide spectacle, with merchandise revenue alone likely swinging by millions. The same pressure comes from broadcast partners, who saw clear proof during the WNBA season that Clark games shattered records, while Team USA contests merely performed respectably. That financial imbalance is the real catalyst behind the sudden openness toward 2025. Because USA Basketball survives on hype to sell tickets, tours, and future events, and the numbers show they discarded a golden opportunity in 2024. This wasn't just a strategic misstep, it was an expensive one. And when revenue starts talking, even the most rigid philosophies bend. The upcoming roster isn't just about adding Clark. It's about removing the barriers that kept her out. The 2024 team revolved around a farewell narrative, a legacy lineup built to honor Diana Taurasi's final chapter, and that chapter is now closed with a 6th gold medal secured. With natural retirements clearing space, the staff no longer has to make a painful cut that could fracture the locker room, giving them cover to pivot toward the future without openly admitting fault. They'll call it evolution, not reversal, but the truth is obvious. Clark didn't wait for permission. she forced change, accelerated the timeline, and made the old guard's grip on the spotlight impossible to justify any longer. The pace Indiana played at, and the distances Clark was shooting from made Team USA's traditional half-court approach look outdated. And now, the whispers are growing louder that the 2025 roster will be built around Clark and Aya Wilson. A seismic shift that quietly admits the torch has to move forward, whether the veterans are comfortable with it or not. The inner circle that once kept Clark at arm's length is breaking apart, not out of kindness, but because it can't survive the speed of the new era. Real admissions in elite coaching never come as apologies. They arrive as subtle language changes and carefully timed invitations. And lately the phrases have changed to evolving roster, next generation, and pointed praise for Clark's toughness and growth. The rigid, "we chose the best 12" posture has softened into talk of flexibility and opportunity, which is coaching code for surrender. They know going into 2025 without her would be a public relations disaster, especially after the Olympic backlash reached levels never seen before, with fans openly disengaging from Team USA. The new plan is obvious. Bring Clark in, likely feature her heavily, and act as if this was always the roadmap. Get experience first, then join the program, hoping people forget how unwanted she initially was. But memory matters, because she wasn't embraced until she became essential. Behind closed doors, this moment reflects a deeper shift in power. In just 18 months, women's basketball has changed more than it did in the previous 2 decades. For years, control lived with selection committees, entrenched coaches, and an old network that treated the national team like an exclusive club where patience and compliance were the price of entry. Clark shattered that structure by becoming bigger than the system itself, proving the gatekeepers no longer decide who matters. That realization is fueling the current instability inside USA basketball, as they scramble to reclaim a story they once controlled. They believe they could manage Clark's rise on their terms, but instead her impact is now dictating their future. And it's impossible to ignore that throughout 2024, as Clark faced relentless physical pressure and aggressive defensive attention, the national leadership chose silence, brushing it off as routine competitiveness. Another reminder that the shift we're witnessing isn't just tactical or financial, it's cultural, and it's irreversible. There was no public shield for Clark from national leadership. And what made it worse was that some of the players rewarded with Olympic spots were also the ones delivering the most punishing on-court treatment, creating a visible fracture between the fans and the institution itself. To the audience, it didn't look like coincidence, it looked coordinated, as if the establishment wasn't just ignoring her, but trying to wear her down. Now, as Coach Reeve attempts to pivot toward 2025, she's staring at a massive trust deficit, because it's not easy to invite someone into a program that stayed silent while she absorbed relentless pressure for months. How do you sell unity to a player who was dismissed as unready just a year earlier? That's why the whispers of an internal admission matter so much. Because this isn't only a basketball correction, it's a diplomatic necessity. Without acknowledging the mistake, Clark would be fully justified in declining, and a public rejection from the sport's biggest star would be a public relations nightmare USA basketball couldn't survive. The shift is also being forced by the sheer statistical outlier Clark became by late 2024, producing numbers so extreme they bordered on unreal, leading the league in assists, obliterating rookie scoring records, generating more total offense than anyone else, while also ranking among the best at her position defensively. The old liability argument collapsed under the weight of data, and by October, advanced metrics placed her firmly among the top players on the planet, making her exclusion indefensible. Reeve knows this, and for a coach who prides herself on preparation, there's no longer a credible way to justify the omission. On top of that, the Clark phenomenon exposed the weakness of the sport's traditional marketing approach, which leaned on ideology over individuality. while she proved that fans follow stars, narratives, and rivalries. The 2024 Olympic run delivered wins but no energy, efficient, controlled, and forgettable, leaving little emotional imprint. Heading into the 2025 Continental and World Cycles, the message inside the room is clear. Success alone isn't enough anymore. They need tension, storylines, and a center of gravity, and whether they admit it publicly or not, Caitlin Clark has become the one element they can't operate without.